Hey everybody, how's it going? And welcome to the SceneGrinder beta. I am Ron, part of the SceneGrinder team, and before I show you the actual site, just a few things to kick it off. First, as we've mentioned, SceneGrinder is basically in a late alpha / early beta stage right now. So what that means is that occasionally you are going to run into things. 90% of the time, if you just refresh your browser page, that will take care of it. And if you have anything more serious, then definitely go ahead and send us a support ticket. I'll show you how to do that in just a second. Also, the beta is going to be done in phases. So phase 1 is scene building, and we've been doing that for the last month, and it's pretty close to wrapping up. And phase 2 is going to deal with character sheets and character movement, and also sharing things within SceneGrinder. And we're in the middle of doing the wrapping up the coding on that right now, so you'll be seeing that functionality here in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn off my camera and show you SceneGrinder. Hold on just a second. Okay, this is the screen you'll see as soon as you log into SceneGrinder. And just going to point out one thing real fast is the support option here. So there's two things on this. There is searching the knowledge base. So we highly encourage you to try this first if you're running into an issue, and issues are also listed here as well as functionality. And just do a search and see the information there. If you don't get the information you're looking for, then by all means go ahead and send us a support ticket. And if you're on Discord, please include your Discord handle so we can reach out to you there. But if you're not on Discord, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and send us a ticket. And so the first thing you want to check when you log in is to make sure it says worlds and campaigns over here, and make sure on this side it's got GM listed. If that's not the case and you've backed us at the $90 or higher level on Kickstarter, or you've purchased since Kickstarter, then definitely send us a support ticket with the email address that you're using, and we'll look into that one. Other things, if you ever want to get back to this screen, just click on the home icon here. There's a link to documentation. This will take you to our website with documentation. Now, we are early in the beta, and we know things are going to be changing a lot, so the documentation is pretty light right now. We'll be building this up during the beta as we get farther along. Roadmap is something I definitely encourage everybody to look at. So this is a list of features that are either only partially implemented or are not implemented that we've talked about during the Kickstarter and all the promotions we've done these last couple of years. So two things is go ahead and let me know via support ticket if there's anything that you've heard us talk about that is not on the list. And also, if you see, these things are roughly in the order that we're planning to do it. I mean, the ordering is going to change based on how the beta is going, but this is the rough order. So if you see anything that's really important to your group and it's low on the priority level, then by all means, go ahead and send us a support ticket and let us know. If possible, we'll rearrange things. Sometimes we can't because of technical issues, but definitely let us know if it's important to you. Next is this link up here. This will take you to your user profile page. And first thing is you've got your SceneGrinder moniker, which will default to the first part of your email address. You can change that here. And you can also do some volume settings here as well. Now, during the beta, this page is going to grow significantly. You'll be able to map the functionality that we've got in SceneGrinder to whatever keys you want on your keyboard, and also be other volume controls and performance options and things like that. But for right now, it's pretty basic. And then on the right-hand side, we've got a section for news, and when we do significant updates, we'll put information over here as well. So that's the intro portion. The next thing is to get into actually creating your first world. Okay, to add a world, all you do is either do the click here or click the plus button. They both do the same thing. And what they're going to do is they're going to put this little rectangle there that says New World. And if you click on it, it'll take you to this screen where you can change the name. I'll just put, I'll call this Demo World. Yep. And then you've got a choice here. You can either import a game system or create a game system, because a world does have to be based on a game system. And so for right now, I'm going to do import a game system. Now, initially for this part of the beta, we've got all of the game systems disabled except for the 5e implementation that the SceneGrinder team has done. So I'll just go ahead and select that. There'll be lots and lots more of these as we get through the beta. I'll click import. And then on the right-hand side of the screen, you can see a bunch of pop-ups. So what's happening there is we are now linking all of the parts of the 5e implementation for SceneGrinder to this specific game world. And give me just a little bit longer for that to play out because there's a lot to 5e, as everybody knows. All right, so those messages are done. And so I'm not going to get into a lot of details right now, but if you click on tables and templates, you can see this is all of the things that are now linked to my game world. So getting back over here, world settings, this is where you can change the name of the world. If you want somebody to be a co-owner for the world, you can do that by linking their SceneGrinder moniker there. And if somebody's a co-owner, just keep in mind that co-owners can do everything that you can do as a world owner. So they can create scenes, they can modify, they can delete scenes, they can delete characters, create characters. However, they cannot delete your game world, which is what this button is for. And they can also not add or remove co-owners. And speaking of deleting a world, this is how you would do it if you need to. If you click on this, it's going to give you a warning. Click that warning, it's going to give you a second warning just to make sure you really want to delete that world. And we do that because if you delete a world, it's deleting everything in that world. So that could be characters, scenes, everything gets deleted along with it. Now, if you do accidentally delete a world that you didn't want to delete, then as soon as possible, go ahead and send us a support ticket because we can recover a world usually within the first couple hours and sometimes as long as a day, just depending on when the backups happen. So there is a little bit of time that you've got to contact us if you accidentally delete the world. World theme. So we've talked about theming during the Kickstarter, and so this is called the baby steps there. And so if you select a different color, you can see the colors on the big buttons change, the accent color here changes, and a few other things change throughout SceneGrinder. During the beta, we'll be adding a lot more theme options, and we'll give you the ability to add theme options, and we'll also control a lot more of what you see visually with the theme options. So go beyond just those colors that you see right now. And you'll also be able to swap out this background image. So that's it for world settings for right now. So let's go ahead and get into scenes. So for scenes, you've got two buttons here. The first one is import. And so this is where you'll be able to grab scenes that other people have shared. And right now it's just got some scenes from the SceneGrinder team. And in the near future, we're going to let everybody put their scenes there as well. And to create a new scene, just click the plus. And so it starts off with a name of new location. I'm going to change this one to House in the Woods. And then you've got two options for the map. You can either click Add Scene Map, and this allows you to grab a 2D scene map that you want to use. And you can start with that as your base, or you can just add a blank map in SceneGrinder. And I'm going to go ahead and do the blank map. And so what you've got here is you've got the map width and the map height. So this is in pixels. So by default, the SceneGrinder's maps are 1024 by 1024 pixels. As you'll see in pretty much everything in SceneGrinder, we don't put limitations on what you can do with the tools that we provide you. So you can make your scene maps as large or small as you want to. What I always tell everybody is just go ahead and play around with creating some maps, and you'll get a good feel for what kind of size you want for it. For example, we've got one map that we use in our games, which is Mills Falls. You've probably seen it in a bunch of videos. It's one with about 40 or 50 houses, 60, 80 trees and stuff like that. That one's 2,000 by 2,000. We've made them up to 4,000 by 4,000. If you want to go larger, that's perfectly fine. Just keep in mind, just play around with it, and you'll figure out what's going to work for your situation. Grid size. So this is saying the length of an edge on a square or hex on your map in pixels. So the default is square, so by default the grid size is 20 pixels by 20 pixels. Grid length is saying how much distance does that measure. And so in 5e, everything is done in feet. So this is saying that 20 by 20 pixel square represents 5 feet, which is standard for 5e. So I'm going to leave it like it is, and I'm going to click Add Blank Map. All right, and so this gives us what I always call the green carpet. So before I do the actual scene, I'm going to show you scene editing real quick, and click the big yellow gear, and there's two buttons here. The first one is Scene Properties. This is where you can change the name of the scene, and it's also where there are things here for controlling gameplay in your scenes. And so you got movement types of free versus turn-based. Free move means exactly what it says. Players can move wherever they want, whenever they want to. And then turn-based is they can only move on their turn. Require plotted movement means, again, just what it says. Before a player can move, they have to plot out what they're going to do and get it approved by the GM. First person point of view, you can force all of your players to be in first person mode, so no overhead camera mode. Show sky, I'll go ahead and turn on. Max zoom out, this is a way to limit the camera, how far away from the character the camera can get when the player is in overhead camera mode. So by default, that camera can only be 50 feet away from the player. Set map, this is the way if you want to, if you create a scene without a 2D map and you decide you want to start with a 2D map, you can click set map and upload the map there. PDF linking we'll talk about more in a future video. That's dealing with these things we call markers. Caching models locally. By default, we do cache the models so that the next time you load a scene, it'll load faster. And share scene is actually going to be changing significantly in the next few weeks as part of phase 2 of the beta. So I'm going to go ahead and click done. Now I did check the show sky, and some of the things you do in SceneGrinder you will have to refresh to see the change. So I'll refresh the screen in just a second. But the second scene options deals with the environment. So this is where you can change the light level on your scene. And you can also set it so that you've got a minimum light level as a GM. You can change the sun position and angle, which right now that's mainly just a cosmetic change for how the players can view the sun in the sky. Later in the beta, we'll be adding back shadows, and when we do that, then these will obviously have a very significant effect. Precipitation, you can have rain and snow in your scenes. You can have fog. You can also have thunder and lightning. So let me go ahead and refresh the screen so you can see how the sky looks. Okay, and you can see the sky over there. Now currently, we've only got this one sky option. We'll be adding a number of different sky options later in the beta. Okay, so whenever you do not have a character selected, if you use the WASD keys, you can move around on the map, and the Q and the E keys will spin the map. So just keep that in mind. Also, okay, so you can use the WASD keys to move around the map. This only works when you do not have a character selected. You can also use the Q and the E keys to spin the map, and the mouse wheel will zoom you in and out. And again, that's standard on any screen as long as you do not have a character selected. So to start editing a scene, just click on the blue circle with the tracker. And this enables this panel over here with 6 different options. And you notice the other buttons that are up there, they go away because they're really not relevant for when you're editing the scene. So starting on the far left with models, you can search for a model if you want to reduce the number of models in the list. And you can see as I started typing, the number of options changes over here. And for a category, if you click on the arrow, it'll show you the options in that category. If you click on the picture, it will give you a pop-up so you can get a close-in view of the model. To use a model, just click Use, and then click on the screen. There's also a note that for some models in here, you may see a red or a yellow indicator. That indicates that the model is either large or very large. It's large for yellow, very large for red. And we let you know about that because, as we said earlier, we don't put any restrictions on what you do in SceneGrinder, and we do have a lot of high quality models that can be a little bit larger than some systems can take. But that's really up to you as a scene builder. So we'll give you a warning if you're grabbing a model that's large or very large, but feel free to still use that in your scenes if you think it'll be fine for your computers and your players' computers. So once you've got a model in the scene, if you left click on it, you can select it, and that's with these arrows here, and these also let you move it around. If you hold down the Control key while it's selected, you can slide the model around. And by the way, the green arrow that's pointing up, as you'd expect, that does move the model up and down vertically. If you have it model selected and you do Control C, that will put you in copy mode. And then you can just click on the map and add copies of that model. And then hit Escape to exit copy mode. And to delete a model, you can either left click on it, hit the delete key on your keyboard. And there's one other way to do that. I'll show you that in just a second. Now, if you right-click on a model, you'll get this little pop-up context menu here. If you choose the top left, this is where you can rotate the model. And all you do is you grab a circle and spin it. Now, the green circle is just spinning the model on its axis. And the red and the blue is tilting the model in the direction based on the circle. So that's the top left. The center top is how you can resize the model. So if you grab the blue, the red, or the green, you can resize the model in the direction that arrow is facing, like that. And if you grab the center, you can resize the entire model, but maintaining its current proportions. And then on the right is one that just gives you the options, that just gives you the arrows for moving it around. On the bottom left, this would be how you would turn a model into what we call a marker, which we'll get into a lot more detail on those later in the beta. But for right now, that's currently disabled. If you click the center, this will give you an option to delete a model, similarly to clicking on the model and hitting the delete on the keyboard, except for this time we give you a warning about it. And for the last one, we move the model up in the air. If you click the bottom right, it will drop the model back down to the ground. So that's it for models. And now I'll go to 3D brushes. And we've got a default for everybody here. I'm just going to make a copy of it. So for a 3D brush, what you're going to do is you're going to assign models to that brush. And then based on all of the parameters you set here, when you either click on the map if you're in place mode or move the circle around the map if you're in brush mode, models will start appearing. So give me just a second here. I'm just going to add a couple of models. And this is how you add models to your brush. And by the way, you can see there's a couple of the trees that are marked as yellow. And you can also remove models just by clicking on them. So now one thing about the model tool, if you do make changes to it before you can actually use it, you will need to refresh SceneGrinder, because normally you would just click use and start using the tool. So give me just a second here. I'm going to go ahead and refresh, and then I'll show you how it works. Okay, so I've refreshed SceneGrinder, and I'll click use. And then I'm just going to start dragging the circle around the map. And as you can see, as I drag it, models start appearing. Yep. And I'll go ahead and hit stop on that. If you ever think you've got too many models, got a little more crowded than you wanted it to be, or you just want some clearings in some areas, you can always put it in delete mode. And then when you do that, it'll delete models, but it's only going to delete models that you've got listed here. So you can see it's not deleting the house because that's not part of that 3D brush. All right, so now as far as the details of what it's doing. The placement rate is how quickly models are placed on the scene when you're dragging the circle around. Now I will say 0.5 is a pretty fast rate, but you can just play with all of these and get them to what you want them to be. The sparsity is the distance in feet between the center of the models. So just to emphasize that just a little bit, turn that off. If I look over here at these pigs, you can see these pigs are almost touching, but so it's the center in this model versus the center in that model. So that's the distance you've got there for sparsity. Vertical height, the left side is the minimum and the right side is the maximum. So what you can see for this tool is models are going to start up to 2 feet below ground or at most on the top of the ground, which again, looking at the pigs again, you can see that's why this pig is partially in the ground because it's 2 feet in the ground. Minimum tilt and minimum pitch, that's going to be the front back and left to right tilt on the models. So you can see this orange tree is a little straighter than this one over here. The rotation is going to be the rotation on the axis. And for all of these, it's on the left-hand side is the start of the range, and on the right-hand side is the end of the range. So basically what you're doing with this is it lets you put down models in a much more realistic way. Because you could just put a couple trees on the scene and then do Control-C to put you in copy mode and then click around the scene, and you can very quickly put 40 or 50 trees out there. But then they would all have the same height, the same rotation, the same tilt. It just wouldn't look very natural for your players. So that's one big advantage of the 3D brush. The other thing is, if you're building a scene, it makes it really easy to put a scene together very quickly. So like in my world, I've got about 20 different brushes set up. I've got a green forest, I've got an autumn forest where you got lots of different tree colors. I've got one for farm animals, one for crops, one for basic town buildings, one for a rich part of town, one for a poor part of town. Just a whole bunch of little things so that when the party comes up and they say, oh, they're going to go into this town I didn't expect, or maybe find this house in the woods I didn't expect, I can quickly grab my tools, and usually in less than a minute, I can have a decent looking scene out there for them. So I highly, highly encourage you to play around with 3D brushes. It can be a huge time saver as a GM. And of course, these are just regular models. So once you've got them placed, you can then move them around however you want to. All right, so next thing on the list is terrain. So if I click on terrain, and this will be very similar to what you're probably used to in other map programs, everything is done based on layers. So all you do is click add layer, and then we've got a whole bunch of options here, and we'll be of course adding tons more during the beta. I'm going to go ahead and click grass, and I'll do forest ground initially. And then all you do is just click and start dragging on the map. Now you can also place it in square if you want to use the square option instead. And if you use the square brackets on your keyboard, you can make the reticle larger or smaller. And there are two options up here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in the map here. Okay, so the first one is scale. So the scale is going to be how zoomed in or out the map is. So if I go to the right, it zooms way out. And then if I go to the left, it'll zoom in. And so basically you just get it to whatever you want it to be for your scene and your tastes. The next one is opacity. And just like you would think, opacity 1 means it's not opaque at all, so nothing can go through that layer. And then the farther you go to the right, the more opaque it becomes, until if you go all the way to the right, then all the layers below it shine through it, and it's basically invisible. Now there's another slider down here, and to demo that one, let me throw another layer on there. And this time I'll go ahead and get a cavern floor. And then I'll just go ahead and start painting my cavern floor layer down there. Now, as you can see, that works. That's fine. But if you're like me, I don't like to have hard edges between terrain layers. So what I do is go to this draw blend level. And so when I do that, this is basically controlling the amount of this terrain that's going to be painted on the scene, or the thickness of it, I should say. So now when I draw it, you can see there's a slight layer coming in, and as I go over an area more and more, it gets thicker and thicker. So this is a way that you can blend these terrain layers together so you don't have those hard edges around everything. You know, totally optional, totally up to you. But this is, again, just a cool way to kind of soften those edges between the terrain layers. There is also an undo feature. And if you click it, it's going to undo your last set of drag strokes with the mouse. So if I click undo here, you can see it took away a lot of that edging that I'd put down there. Now keep in mind, although there's an undo and you can go back as far as you want to with the undo, there's not a redo. So once you undo something, that change is permanently gone. Now later in the beta, we're also going to be adding an erase feature, so you can select a layer and erase parts of that layer, but that's not there quite yet. And finally, for this, if you each layer can be moved up and down in the order. And so you see I moved forest ground above the cavern floor, which means it has precedence, so it basically covers up most of that cavern floor there. And you can click the red icon on the right to completely remove a layer. So that covers terrain, and next thing on the list is elevation. So for elevation, we've got a height, and by the way, later in the beta, we're going to let you just type a height in directly. For right now, it's using this slider, but I'll go ahead and put this slider at, I'll put it at 10 feet. And then using the WASD keys, I'll move around a little bit, and I want to make this reticle a bit larger here. So you've got two types of fall-offs. So if I do plateau, as you can see, what that means is the area under the reticle is whatever's height I've specified here, and it's a sheer drop-off to the layer below it. And I'm going to undo that change, and then I'm going to come back and switch it over to slope, and just to make it really obvious, I'm going to go ahead and make the circle larger. And this time when I do it, you can see what it's doing is the very center of the elevation is that height that I specified. And then SceneGrinder goes out to the very edges of the reticle and gently slopes down to those edges. The angle of the slope will depend on the height difference between the edge down here and the center up here. So that's just a way to edge things, to slope more gently with that. And let's see, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller again. And I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to do a decrease. So I'm going to put this down to -10. So what I'm doing now is I'm basically digging down into that terrain. And I'll show you how you can put water in that in just a second here. All right, so now I've got a depression in the ground. And just to make it stand out a hair better, I'm going to add a layer on that, and I'll call that water, and I'll go with that one. And I'm just going to paint that in there real quick. All right, so I'm going to go back to elevation, and then there's an option down here called water type. Now when I click on it, I'll click on calm. And remember I told you that there are a couple bugs. So the way water works right now in SceneGrinder is you set water at the scene level. So what's happening right now is you see everything's covered in water except for that hill I created because the default height for the water is 0. So what you want to do is to put water on there is after you select the water type, then refresh SceneGrinder. I'm going to pause it for a second while I do that. Okay, I'm back, so I paused it. So when I refresh, then the water level field appears, and all you do is use the down arrow to change the height on it. So what I'm saying right now is anything that is 2 feet, negative 2 feet or below is going to have water. So you can play around with this to get the water level to what you want it to be. Now later in the beta, we're going to have water as more of a object, like a scene object, so that you can do things like put a lake on top of a mountain or create a waterfall where water falls down from one layer to another layer. But for right now, it's just a static level within your scene. All right, so the next part over here, and actually I'm going to skip walls for a second. I'm going to do grid next. And grid's pretty simple. So remember when we created the scene, we have a grid size of 20 and a grid length of 5. If you do need to change that later on, you can change it here. So you can see as I click the plus and minus arrows here, the grid size gets larger. And also you can change the grid length here. There's no visible difference changing the grid length. It's just a game mechanics difference. And you can, this is also where you can switch between hex and grid. And the big thing you can do, which is especially useful if you're pulling in a 2D map, and I'll go to the edge so you can see it, using these 4 arrows here, you can slide the map around so it'll match up with whatever grid you've got in your imported 2D map. And just one more note about scenes I forgot to mention before. When you create a scene, you set the width and the height. Remember, it's 1024 in pixels. You cannot change that after the scene is created. Later in the beta, we're going to allow you to change it. We're also going to allow you to break up scenes into multiple scenes. But for right now, you cannot change that scene size once you created it. All right, so let me go back to walls. And let's slide over here a little bit. All right, so the way walls work is you can see there are 3 different shapes that we've got. And up top, you've got a bunch of different textures, and you've got height and a width up here. So I'm going to start with the interactive first. So what that means is you just click on a wall texture, and then click on the map. And you get this indicator saying where your wall is going to start. And then if you click, you can see it starts forming the wall. And every time you click, you're adding another section to that wall. To stop adding sections, just hit escape. To select the wall again, just click on it. And you'll notice all these little black dots on the top. So these are what we call posts. And you can grab a post and move it around. These are basically just connector points in your walls that you can do things with. When you've got a wall selected, you can very easily change the width on it, change the height, and you can also even just change out the texture for the wall. Just have it selected, there you go, and then there you go. You can change that out. There's other things you can do, such as adding doors and windows and roofs and floors, and I'll show that in just a second. But for right now, I'm just going to click on Delete Wall, and there you go. So the wall is gone. Now let's move on to square/rectangle and circle options. So if I choose square/rectangle, you can see you've got a room width and depth. And then all you do is select the texture that you want. I'll choose this one and click on the map. And when you do that, you can see you get movement options. So you can move the room to wherever you want it to be. Then just hit enter when you're done. And there you go. You can see you've got the room. If you click on it again to select it, and you hit the M key, that's going to put you in the move option again. So if you decide you want it right here instead of where it's at, you can easily move it around. So if you click on the wall again and hit the M key, it'll put you back into movement mode. But if you hold down the shift key, it's going to put you into resizing mode. So say you don't actually like the size on that wall, you can stretch it out a little bit, or you can grab the center like you're doing with the model and resize the whole room that way. And then when you're done, you can see what it's going to be with that outline on the ground and hit enter. And there you go. You can also click on it, then hit M, and then hold down the Shift key, and then you can rotate it. And there you go. So the cool thing about doing this as opposed to interactive walls is it maintains the shape there. So I'll show you the other stuff in just a second. So let me go ahead and select this wall and go ahead and do delete wall. So I'll get that out of there. And let's move on to circle. So you can see by default the circle width is 30. I think I'll just go ahead and leave it at that. And I'm going to choose a different texture for it. Click on the ground. And there you go. So now I've got my texture there. So now if I click back on it again, just a few other things that you can do. One is we've got apertures. So let's say that I want to have a door for that wall. You can click door. Now by default, we've got open closed options. Only closed works currently, so that's an issue we'll fix. But you can always open the door once you go back into gameplay mode. And you can make doors openable by players if you want to. So then I just do set door 1. And there you go. If I zoom in a little bit, you can see I've now got a door in there. And if I click on another section, then go to apertures and do window. And for a window, you can set the threshold height. I'll just go ahead and leave it default at 3. Click set window. And there you go. So now I've got a window. And the way this works is each section, that's a block of wall between 2 posts, can have 1 aperture in it. So you can have as many walls and windows as you want. It's just they need to be in the only 1 per section. So other things you can do is you can add floors and ceilings. So I've got my structure selected. I'll do add floor first. And I'll select the texture for the floor. So I'll give it a wooden floor. And then you can also change, if you need to change texture on the floor, just do change floor and select a different texture. And then I'll do add roof. And this time I'll give it that wooden roof there. So you can see now I've got a building with a roof on it. So other cool things that you can do is, let me go ahead and I've got it selected again, and I'm going to hit C, which again is going to put me into copy mode, just like I did with the square. And I'm just going to move it up here and hit enter. And so now you can see I've got two buildings stacked on top of each other. So let me go ahead and go here, put this door back to none because I don't want a second floor door. And set none, so I'll take that out of there. And also for this one, I don't really want a roof on it, so I'll just go ahead and remove the roof. And there you go. So anyway, that's how you can create multi-story buildings. Now, I'm going to pause the video for just a second while I grab a model and show you how to add stairs and openings in your buildings. Okay, so what you can see is I went out and I added a stair model, and the way SceneGrinder works is if you put a stair model in there, then we poke a hole in the roof so that players can get up and down via those stairs. So that's how you can make multi-story buildings. And also just a kind of a quick fun note here. What I've got here is I've now added 2 layers up top. And because I want to show you other things you can do, which is gap section and delete section. So if I do gap section, what it's going to do is it's going to keep this as all one contiguous wall, but it's going to put a gap in there. So I'm going to just put a few of these in here. So you can see basically what I'm doing is building myself a cool looking tower with a crenellations on the top there. All right, let's do one more of these and I'll... Okay, so that's gap section, because the thing you'll notice here is when I click on it, all of the posts are selected, and so if I change the texture on it, everything changes. As opposed to delete section, so I select a section and then I do delete section. So what delete section is going to do is it's going to take that wall and actually split it into multiple walls. So now what I've got here is I've got one section that this is one wall. If I click over here, I've got another wall. And so they operate completely independently. So just keep in mind, that's the difference between a delete section and a gap section. And one last thing that you can do is I'm just going to throw a rectangle back down on my scene. I'll hit escape to deselect that wall. Put a wooden structure down. Is you can do inserting posts. So say I want a door in that section, but I don't want it to be in the center. I want it to be over here. You can click insert post. When you do that, you do need to click back on the wall for that post to appear. But then you can resize that section, and then I can put my door in right over here near that corner where I want it to be. All right, so that pretty much covers scene building. So we went through all 6 of these options down here. So I'm going to exit scene building. And one other thing I'm going to show you real quick is adding a character to your world. So if you hit the wormhole icon, the first one is creating a character. And to do that, you do need to hold down the Alt key and click on the map, and I'll give you that red arrow. If you don't do that and you click on Create Character, we give you a message saying to do that. So I'll click on that, and then I will get this pop-up screen, and we'll go over this screen in a lot more detail later in the beta, but for right now, you just want to select Character, and then you can put as many down as you want to, and then just click Next. And then we generate just a basic name with a number on it. You can also use our name generation option here. And then just click Add to Scene. And one thing you'll notice is when you come in, this character looks a little bit small, especially in relation to that door. That's not an optical illusion. Our default character is coming in about 3 feet tall right now. This is just that one specific model, so that'll be fixed pretty quickly. But so you are correct that he looks small. Now, the one thing I want to show with this is character movement. So you can use, if you've got a character selected, then the WASD move is moving the character instead of moving the map. You can also double click on the ground to do plotted movement. And the way it works is if it's within the character's standard move, it shows up in green. Once it gets beyond that, it shows up in blue. To do the movement, you can either hit the W key on your keyboard or come over here and hit the boot and then do move. So that's in the overhead camera mode, and I'm going to pause the video for just a second, and then I'll just do a real quick video and show you how it looks from first person point of view in an actual dungeon that we are currently playing in. Okay, so here I'm in the level 1 of the Temple of Elemental Evil in our current campaign, and just kind of putzing around here in first person point of view. You can see this is an awfully cool way for the players to view the world. Anyway, so that was it. Just wanted to give you a quick view from a player's perspective on for the creations that you'll be doing. And I hope you've enjoyed this video, and let us know what you think about SceneGrinder. Talk to y'all later. Bye.